Thank you, committee. My name is Davante Lewis. Today, I am not here in my normal capacity at the Louisiana Budget Project, but I am here in my independent capacity as a board member of the Louisiana Foundation Against Sexual Assault. Senator Peterson knows this. I have been fighting higher education and fighting for higher education for at least the last decade. I was the student body president at McNeese State University for 2 years. I was the Council of Student Body Presidents chairman. I was the board student member on the University of Louisiana system. So I have watched sexual assault and dealt with it from hearing my fellow students, from being a board member and receiving reports, from being a campus president who had to be on disciplinary committees, and now as an advocate at the Foundation Against Sexual Assault. And I can say not much has changed in those 10 years. I'm hearing the same answers from higher education that I heard 10 years ago, the same questions that I asked as a student leader. I've watched other student leaders come up here today and say the exact same things that I was asking. And so we've heard a lot of talk, and nothing's getting done. And it really is time that the legislator had accountability over higher education. And it really starts at the board level. Representative Hughes has asked questions about the makeup of the board, and I think it's beyond gender. It's about who we appoint. Remember, as there's one student on every one of those boards, and we are student body presidents elected who have to go through the campus politics of administration. And it's very hard to speak out as a student leader. I did it and was ridiculed multiple times, not only by my institution, but by the governor at the time, for speaking out as a student leader. So when we talk about accountability, we have to remember the board has significant powers. When we look at the case in Attorney General Landry's office, remember Mr. McGee was a board member of the Southern University system. So when we are trying to talk about accountability and we're not including every level, students do not have a voice and hasn't have a voice in this state in a long time. And the system is rigged from the start. There's no voice, there's no power. We need student ombudsmen who are outside of the administrative level, because even if we get to the heart of the issue where those in charge report to the people they should, we find that students are often bullied and ridiculed for saying what needs to be done. I want to hold space not only for the powerful testimony that we've heard from women students. And Representative Freiberg asked about male students, but I also want to raise some students and those victims who don't get often mentioned, and those are the LGBTQIA individuals, Black trans women and men who often do not report anything because of the systematic failure we have heard. So we have failed multiple demographics in this policy and in this procedure. It is time, I think, for the Louisiana legislator to hold higher education and its leaders accountable. Morgan mentioned it a lot of times. It's not a resources issue. Because I remember the days, Senator Barrow, you were in the House, Senator Peterson, you were here, when I was one of the only students coming up here talking about funding. And we had leaders in higher education who really didn't say anything. They didn't back us up as students. And now they're coming saying, we're going to do better. We're going to do right. I have watched it for 10 years and not anything has changed. And I say this with the most respect for the members of higher education who I've worked with on multiple issues in my professional job. When it comes to making sure students are protected, not only in sexual assault, but in variations of racial intimidation, and multitude of things, there is no accountability. And as someone who sat in board meetings, the board doesn't do it either, because they are there because they donated to the governor's campaign and were appointed, not because they care about higher education. Right. And we have to start there. There's not a single faculty member on any of our system boards. When you go down and you look at the professional demographics of our board members, they're not diverse, not only on gender and race, but they're all business leaders, people who come for football tickets, people who come to make sure that the alumni board runs the way they want it to and the campus is run the way they intended, not accountability. And so when we want to talk about systematic failures, it starts with the way we've structured the system, because it's not failing, it is operating the way it was designed to protect the people they want it to protect, which is those in power. And I say this with all my heart. I will not stop this fight until we make higher education accountable to the students, to the families, and to the community of the state of Louisiana. And I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for that very powerful testimony. We appreciate that. We still don't have any questions yet. Now we have, I'm sorry,
Mr. Sternberg.
Mr. Sternberg.
Madam Chairman.
I moved my card.
No worries. It's late, and I'll be as brief as I can. Scott Sternberg here. Most of you know me as the guy that represents the media. First, let me start out by saying, Davante, you should run for office. Second off, that was a very good speech.
Yeah.
But many of you may not know that when I was in law school, I sat on the LSU Board of Supervisors as the elected student member. I was the student body president at the law school. So I have a fair amount of involvement in higher education from a previous life. But in this life, I represent Samantha Brennan, who you heard from earlier, and who I'm very proud to represent, and Kenny Jacoby, who I'm also very proud to represent in his capacity as a reporter at USA Today. But, you know, Senator Mizell, I'm here to point out that we had to sue to get those records. We didn't just get them. And part of the problem we have in this state is that, you know, when public bodies have budgets, you know, they don't think about a lawsuit like you and I do, Representative Hughes. They don't think about it like that. They just see a line item on a budget. It's not a family budget where I've only got $2,000 to spend on my will this year. We don't have that problem, Representative Freiberg. We have that problem in Louisiana state government. And part of the problem that we have is that, like what happened with the Attorney General a couple of weeks ago, where he sued my other client, Miss Gallo, sitting back there in the corner. Sometimes it's just easier to just let the lawsuit go forward than to just give over the records, right? And now we know all these things about Les Miles, right? Because Kenny Jacoby sued over that too. Thank goodness USA Today showed up, because he wasn't allowed in the room with young women for years. And we just found out about it. It's very disturbing. I agree. And my point is to stand up here, and because when I'm usually in front of you, Senator Peterson, or, you know, when I'm talking about transparency, that's what I care about. That's the hill that I die on, is transparency, right? The hill that LSU died on was Darius Geis, who we've heard about today. And they chose to make Samantha Brennan sue them over her police report. And I was excoriated in court because I said that LSU wanted to die on Darius Geis's hill. And since we're here talking about Darius Geis, I just want to point out that I'll take Samantha Brennan any day of the week. All right? I'll take my side any day of the week. Here's the problem. Until we have accountability, these people knew. They knew. The people on the boards knew about all of this for a decade, and they still allowed this to happen. And finally, one more thing I want to point out, Senator Peterson. I know you want to get out of here, and I do too. This concept that I can hire a lawyer and hide behind the attorney-client privilege. I wish Representative Freeman was still here, because we were talking about this earlier. This is the new trick from the public bodies. We hire a lawyer and we say everything's attorney-client privilege, Representative Marcel. We don't want that. It's an HR problem, not a lawyer problem. But if you hire a lawyer, the communications privilege sometimes, maybe sometimes. We saw that in the Les Miles case. Unfortunately, the judge found correctly that it wasn't all privileged, so we got those documents. But this is a problem, and you can fix it with legislation. And so I know it's a fiscal session, everybody's slots are taken, but next year, let's talk about how we can make sure that Samantha Brennan doesn't have to file a lawsuit to get her records. And let's talk about when we hire lawyers. Why are we hiring lawyers? To protect ourselves, because that's what we're doing. Well, the lawyers are doing their job. I don't have any problem with the lawyers. Most lawyers are very good people. In fact, Tom Galligan's a very fine person, a person I've known for a very long time. And Scott Schneider, who's on the phone, prince of a guy. I think he did a great job. Now, he didn't do everything that he should have done with Samantha Brennan, but he had a very short amount of time, and boy, was there a lot to work with. People are going to mess up. I'll take any questions you have on the transparency issues.
All right. Okay. Still not yet any questions.